If you haven't watched One Piece yet, I am both surprised and not surprised. One Piece has some of the best characters and writing in any anime ever. But, at the same time ain't nobody got time to watch over 1,000 episodes of this shit. However, the anime rewards you by giving you one of the best stories the big three have to offer. Because of its popularity, there were One Piece games, like the Pirate Warriors series, and the only PvP fighting game Burning Blood. But when those games came out, I wasn't really as invested in One Piece as I am today. But as I did get more and more invested in the show, a little game called One Piece World Seeker came out. Something that caught my eye is the fact that it was open world, and the story was actually written by Eiichiro Oda himself. Anyway, I decided to play this as my first One Piece game. And today I'm here to give you my review for One Piece World Seeker. The game has DLC for Zoro, Law, and Sabo. But we'll talk about that later. First, let's talk about the story. I think this takes place a bit after the whole Cake Island arc, seeing as Luffy already knows Bounce Man and Sanji is with them, but the main story is about this girl Jean and her brother Isaac. And their mother used to lead the island, but she was killed by pirates, which caused Isaac to join the navy and make the island more of a prison. This causes a lot of people to become either anti-navy or pro-navy, which makes tensions rise on the island, and now Jean has to do her best to not let anyone hurt each other. But when Isaac starts harvesting the island's natural dynastones for his plan, it looks to be brewing an all-out war between the pirates, the admirals, the citizens, Germa 66 and CP0, and it's up to Luffy and the rest of the Straw Hats to stop it. The story has Oda written all over it, literally and figuratively. The story is really cool, and the brother-sister relationship with Jean and Isaac is really compelling stuff. It really ties the game together. All in all, it's a really compelling story with lots of cool character moments and storytelling, and I really like it. However, the thing that shined for me the most in this game is its gameplay. For traversal, you can use Gum Gum Rocket, which lets Luffy grab onto anything and just fling himself forward really fast. You can also continuously do it and grab onto more stuff to keep launching yourself. There's also Gum Gum UFO, where if you mash A, because I'm using a Xbox controller, Luffy can spin around and hover like a UFO for a short amount of time. It isn't very reliable, but for getting short distances quickly and precisely, it's pretty good. Another traversal item you can get is if you have the DLC, it gives you access to Vivi's Duck Karu. I'll be honest, I never really used him that much, mainly because there are other much better traversal options, so I don't really need him all that much. Okay, let's talk about the combat now. One of your main moves is Gum Gum Pistol. When you use it, you go into an FPS mode and you just shoot people with your fist. I think it's actually pretty cool. Aside from that, you have two modes of fighting. The blue bar next to you shows your current fighting style. Right now it's in observation mode. Observation mode relies more on observation haki, dodging and quick precise blows. Speaking of observation haki, you have this blue sphere thing right beside you. This is your observation gauge. It basically has the energy to let you use observation haki moves like perception and focus. Perception is basically like detective vision in the Batman Arkham games. But unlike those games, if you use Gum Gum Pistol in observation mode, it gives you access to the perfect and long shot. These moves give you much more range and a shot that always does critical damage, which is pretty neat. Focus basically slows down time, and it's really useful if you're in a boss fight and need to get away to recover your strength or something. However, you don't get the perfect and long shot if you attack with pistol in focus. By clicking down on the D-pad, it changes your mode from observation to armament. In this mode you lose your dodge that you get in observation and instead replaces it with a block. Armament basically does more damage, and with the block you can tank more hits. If you use pistol in armament it does more damage, but the trade-off is that it's a bit slower. In this mode you also have access to Gum Gum Bazooka, and if you use pistol in perception it lets you use Hawk Gatling and rifle instead of the perfect and long shot. Alright, last thing we're going to talk about is the tension gauge. The tension gauge is basically your super meter. By fighting enemies or taking damage it raises up and lets you do some super moves. First up is Red Hawk, which costs 1 tension gauge. It's alright, there's nothing super special about it. You can also whip it and if you do it'll still take the tension gauge, but it's alright for an opener. Next one is Eagle Storm. It costs 2 tension gauge and is basically a drill that rams into your opponent. It probably does the most damage out of all the tension moves if it's fully upgraded. Next is Elephant Gatling. This one just rains down on enemies and it looks really cool. However, it's probably the most unreliable of these moves because the enemies can just move out of the way, and if they don't get hit, you basically wasted 3 tension gauge for nothing. Last tension move is Conqueror's Hockey. It also costs 3 tension. Conquerors basically KOs all weaker enemies and stuns stronger ones, which let you go into a takedown. Out of all the tension moves, Conqueror's Hockey is the most reliable out of all of them, and also one of my favorites. Okay, after this I swear we're going to stop talking about the combat. If you have more than 1 tension gauge and click up on the D-pad you can activate Luffy's transformation, which is Gear 4, Bounce Man. At first I was kind of surprised by how weak Bounce Man was, but you can unlock some of his skills in order to make him a bit stronger, and when he is, it's so satisfying to just bounce around and fight as him. Bounce Man can't switch between armament and observation, but he can dodge so much that he can actually fly. It's pretty helpful if you're in a mission that needs you to go up high. You can just skip it with Bounce Man's jet boosts. You can also do Gum Gum Pistol as Bounce Man, but there is no limit how much you can do it and it is really powerful. Getting attacked as Bounce Man doesn't deal you any damage, but it does lower Bounce Man's timer. When you run out of timer you can't get any tension gauge for a while, and you're stuck having to use Observation Hockey, but I personally like it. It gives a risk and reward for using Bounce Man and it's really cool. If Bounce Man isn't doing enough damage for you, there's also another move you can use as him that deals serious damage. Gear 4, Snake Man. It's just a little cutscene that shows Snake Man using King Cobra. It also immediately takes you out of Bounce Man, so it's more of a final stand move more than anything. The actual last thing is the skills. You get skill points throughout the game and you can use them on this big skill tree. Some moves are utterly useless, like giving you extra time in a barrel, but some give you more important things like more attack and health points. Some skills even give you new moves. Every DLC character also has their own skill tree, albeit with reduced pricing. The combat in the game is absolutely amazing, and I think this is probably the best combat system a One Piece game could actually have, because this is just awesome. Hockey and the Gum Gum moves are just interconnected so seamlessly. The entire island though is really big. If you jump from the Sky Island you'll get a giant bird's eye view of the whole island. This probably gives you a sense of how big this place actually is, but for how big it is, it's honestly kind of bland. Bland cities, bland villages, bland architecture. It's all way off from the amazing architecture and design of the more iconic islands in One Piece. Think Water 7, Sabayati, or Alabasta. With how hard Oda cooked on the story, I think they could have cooked a little bit better on the entire design of the island and made it much more iconic than it really is. The game isn't perfect, mind you. I do have some complaints. For one, unless you have some gear crafted, you're going to have a tough-ass time with the game. This game is just relentless with its enemies, and if you don't have any gear you are guaranteed to get your ass beat. For example, I died multiple times to Rob Lucci, who is a boss character in the game. The only way I was able to beat him was by cheesing the game and healing in some areas where he couldn't get me. If he did, he would be able to take me out in one hit. I know what you're thinking. Oh, but that adds an extra challenge to the game. And I would say yeah, it probably does, if this game had better controls. Because the controls in this game, not necessarily the combat but the actual control of your character in game, sucks. For example, say you need to make a split-second dodge. Press the dodge button and you dodge, simple. But not in this game. Every button you press in this game feels very heavy for some reason, and that just throws me off whenever I play it. It's honestly manageable but distracting when the heavy controls are just a real burden, even when you're playing in observation mode, where you're supposed to be fast, you still feel super slow. Okay, let's lightning round the DLC so I can go for closing thoughts and wrap up this review. So the Zoro DLC deals with Zoro doing some investigation on the island, and eventually he finds a robot called Keijiro, and learns it was specifically made to defeat him with the ability to learn and counter Zoro's moves. But when Zoro tries to deal with this himself, Keijiro gets out, and so Zoro has to team up with Tashigi in order to take this thing down. Plot is alright. I like how it explains what Zoro was doing during the game. Playing as Zoro is much different than playing as Luffy, because Luffy is much more agile and stuff, Zoro is just not. And because of this there's no way to switch between armament and observation, and Zoro is just stuck with a block. If you time it right and do a perfect block, it'll slow down time like if you were using observation focus. Zoro also has a tension gauge and like Luffy can use a various assortment of moves. However, moves like observation focus and perception are not there and are instead replaced with some other moves. Zoro also has an infinite jump which basically does what you think it does. So Zoro does have a quote-unquote transformation move. It's called Serious Mode, where he just ties his bandana around his head. It is similar to Gear 4 but it does give Zoro a massive damage buff. But if you try and use some of the tension moves it'll deactivate Serious Mode, so in a way it's like when Gear 4 uses Snake Man. All the DLCs are like 6 chapters long, and if you don't use the skill points on the right things there's no way you're going to be able to beat the bosses. There are some seriously stupid ones in these DLC, like, I lost my mind trying to figure out how to cheese the game in order to not die in 2 hits to Keijiro and Kizaru double teaming you. Alright, up next is Sabo's DLC. So in this one the islanders call up the revolutionary army and they send Sabo over to get a lay of the land. Sabo eventually finds out CP0 is also on the island and he decides that he has to stop them from doing whatever they were doing. Honestly, this one's probably my least favorite out of the DLC stories. I mean, I like Sabo fine. It's just the story isn't really much Sabo doing stuff for himself, and it's just Isaac mostly stringing him along. Sabo plays more like Luffy than Zoro, but he still can't switch between armament and observation. He has the flame dodge and flame shot, or whatever it was called. It's basically Luffy's Gum Rocket, but instead it's fire. Out of all of the DLC characters I think Sabo has the worst moveset. First of all, 2 of his moves are 3 tension, he only has 1 2 tension move, and 2 1 tension moves. I know that Zoro and Law literally have the same thing, but there's just something about Sabo that feels much different than both of them that I just don't really like. Anyway, Sabo also has the perfect dodge where it'll slow down time just like if you do the perfect block with Zoro. What sucks the most about Sabo is that he does not have a transformation quote-unquote. See, the bosses in this game are very difficult, and one such boss goes by the name Rob Lucci. Rob Lucci has to be the most infuriating boss I've ever fought in a video game. Not only does he do a stupid amount of damage if you don't have any gear, but during the boss fight he had with Sabo you had to defeat this man in less than 2 minutes. I tried everything I could think of, I even restarted from a previous checkpoint so I could gain more skill points and give it to the correct things just so I could beat this guy. Imagine if I didn't have that last checkpoint load, I would still be doing little to no damage with my ranged shot and I might never have been able to beat him and the DLC. That's just how BS this guy is to fight. Okay, let's talk about the Law DLC before I start rambling on about how bullshit Rob Lucci is. We see Law the least in this game and I honestly don't even know when this is supposed to take place. It has elements of both late and early game so it's very confusing. In the DLC, Law meets up with a kid named Rule whose dad made a map of the Sky Island. Rule wants to complete it so Law decides to help him out. But when the Marines show up searching for the map because it'll lead them to the Dynastones, Law has to take them out. Like Sabo and Zoro before him, Law has a tension meter but he also has something new. It's called the Room Gauge. The Room Gauge basically lets you use some new moves, like Counter Shock, Room Assault, and Tact, which is basically your ranged move. As you use these moves the meter goes down and until it refills you can't use any room moves. Law also has a new way of moving. Sabo can use his fire shot to fly through the sky and Zoro has his infinite jump but Law can teleport. Using Shambles, Law can teleport almost anywhere in the vicinity as long as you have some of the room gauge. I gotta say it's probably my favorite way of moving in this game. All of the original voice actors come back for this game and because there are a lot of them I don't really feel like going through each and every single one of them. I'll just go through the two most important ones which are Isaac and Jean. So let's start with her first. Jean is voiced by Ayumi Fujimura. If you don't know her, she voiced Knee Socks in Panty and Stocking and was also the Japanese voice for Zelda in Link Between Worlds. I think she does an excellent job here, since the game doesn't only use static images with text on them, we actually do hear her voice a lot. I think she's pretty awesome and delivers on the emotional moments very well. Jean herself is honestly kind of stale, not that she isn't a compelling character but she's basically what we've already seen in One Piece. You know, Vivi is basically blue Nami, Rebecca is basically pink Nami, Shirahoshi is another pink Nami and completing the primary color trifecta is Jean who is green Nami. Again, not that Jean isn't a compelling character and the story isn't bad but we've just seen her type a lot of times already, it kinda gets a little stale. Either way I still do like her, well, as much as I like Vivi, Rebecca and Shirahoshi. Next up is Isaac voiced by Rukiya Koyama. Rukiya actually has a lot more roles that I recognize when I check his Wikipedia. He was Jing in Hunter x Hunter, Deep Sea King in One Punch Man, and he even did Kairos, which is another character in One Piece. I like his performance here. It wasn't anything too spectacular but it was pretty good. As a character I kind of find Isaac more interesting than Jean. After pirates killed his mom he joined the Navy to hunt them down, but he apparently knew the truth about the Navy and planned to use the Dynastones to destroy Marighwa. Isaac ended up pushing his sister away because of his new role, and with everything weighing in on him he's actually a much more interesting character and I think he's really cool. It's kind of funny since for Jean I really liked her voice actor but not really her character, but for Isaac I liked him more as a character but thought his voice actor was just alright. It's kinda funny to think about. Time for final thoughts. The game is alright. The gameplay, traversal, and combat systems are all really good, and the story is just phenomenal. It's just a shame that the actual island and the characters in it are pretty boring. It's especially sad because Odin knows how to make really awesome islands. I just wish he and the devs cooked as hard on the island and the characters as they did for the gameplay. This is by no means the perfect One Piece game but it's close, really close. I'm going to rate this at a 7 out of 10. I really think all One Piece fans should play this at least once. I do think there are a lot of good things about it, but I don't think there are enough people out there giving it a chance. That's all for me though. I'll see you all later.
Luffy, I'm gonna level with you. I think my best bet is actually to become a Marine. All I've gotta do is knock on this door and ask for a job.
Screw doors, lad! Follow me!
Luffy, wait!
Oh my god, Cody, you'll never guess what I'm looking at! They're filming The Hangover 2 over here!
Oh yeah? How is it?
It's just like the first one! Wait a second, who's over there? Is that you, Zoro? Zoro! 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 Zoro!
Eat me!
yeah.